It is it is 3:02, and we're going to get started with our webinar today. Thank you all so much for being here. We are so happy that you could join us. Today, we're here to talk about the state of commercial solar market in Philadelphia. I'm your host, Mary Rose Martinez, the Executive Director of the Philadelphia Green Capital Corp. We are the Green Bank affiliate of PEA, the Philadelphia Energy Authority. And today we're joined by some wonderful panelists from NRG, Naveen, formerly Greenworks Lending, EDP Renewables, and Solar States. So you'll be hearing from these experts on a variety of topics related to commercial solar, including different value propositions for different types of customers, various ways to pay for your solar, including PPAs, VPPAs, CPAs, cash options, and what really makes an ideal commercial solar project. Next slide, please. So before we jump in, I'd like to remind you that this session is part of a series of events we're hosting this week as part of Philadelphia Solar Week. For those solar developers on the call, we have a session tomorrow with PECO, our local utility. The session will cover PECO's solar goals and how to get a solar project through the interconnection process, in addition to a number of other items in that realm of topics. Later on this week, we have sessions on the solar workforce, the basics of how to go solar for your home and business, and the economic value of going solar. So check out our website, solarizephilly.org, to learn more about these events and to learn more about how to sign up to go solar. Next slide, please. So just to set a baseline with everybody on the call, I want to make sure you're familiar with the Philadelphia Energy Authority, PEA. We are a municipal authority, and we really view energy as a tool for impact. The energy really has a key role in a number of different impactful avenues in the city, including economic development, creating jobs, alleviating poverty, and improving public health. And as you'll hear today and throughout the entire week, and hopefully beyond just this week, solar is a really key tool to meet these objectives. Next slide. So without any further ado, let's hop into the content of today's webinar. I'd like to introduce Clay Bedwell from NRG. First, he'll be talking about the Pennsylvania solar landscape, including community solar prospects and the Solar Renewable Energy Credit SREC market. Clay, I'm handing it over to you.
All right, great. Thanks, Mary Rose. And thank you for having us, everyone at PEA. As a longtime Philadelphian, it's always a privilege to help out with the work you guys are doing. So we can just get rolling here and go to the next slide, which is by far my most exciting slide. I believe it's a legal disclaimer that tells you all the things that you can and cannot expect from this talk. I'm just going to give everybody a second to read that, really soak it up, just to get everybody ready to go here. And then once we're done that, in 3, 2, 1 seconds, we can go on to a marginally more exciting slide, which is about the PA SREC market update. So we're just going to do a level set here because I'm going to assume that not everyone knows what a REC is or what an SREC is. So just really quickly, just to set the foundational knowledge, a REC, also known as a renewable energy certificate or credit, is just a financial instrument that represents the non-energy components of renewable generation. So that would include the environmental, the social benefits, and any other co-benefits associated with renewable generation. So when we're talking about an SREC, that refers to a solar REC, and this is really a mechanism that is created by state-specific renewable portfolio standards. In Pennsylvania, it's the Alternative Energy Portfolio Standard, and a SREC is a component used in a solar carve-out, which is part of a renewable portfolio standard that is required to be met by solar generation. So now that we got all that out of the way, we can actually talk about what's going on in the SREC market in Pennsylvania. And what this chart shows is just the price of a PA solar REC for the 2022 vintage. So we're talking about RECs, we're talking about vintage years, and that refers to more or less kind of oversimplified in this sense, but it's a year that REC is generated in. There's actually a 19-month window for an eligible vintage, but this is already a fairly dry subject, so we'll kind of keep it high level on that perspective. And what you can see is that if you look back to end of 2020, the PA SREC was trading around $25. And then as we got into Q1 of 2021, you start to see volatility in the PA SREC market. And a lot of people ask me, Clay, what's going on with the PA SRECs? And really what we're seeing here is we're seeing a response to potential legislation on the state level, which would amend the alternative portfolio standard to increase tier 1 renewable requirements to 18% by 2026. And so this is simply a market factor, right? The SREC or RECs operate like any other market. It's supply and demand. As it stands right now in the current state, not without any considerations for a increased RPS, what you see in Pennsylvania is you see an oversupplied SREC market, probably by about 30%. So we have a certain amount of generation capacity installed for solar, let's call it about 700 megawatts, and you have a certain amount of required compliance SRECs based on the load served in that market. And if you compare those two, you can kind of see that there's more SRECs produced than is what is required by the compliance market. Now, there's a little caveat in there in the sense that there's going to be voluntary buyers that will buy SRECs and retire them on their own behalf, so they will be taken out of the compliance market. So you kind of discount that the capacity a little bit. And so it's a pretty well-balanced market, but what you can see is that from the prospect of increasing the AEPS and by extension increasing the solar carve-out to 5.5% total, then you're seeing the supply side increase, and as a result, the price will increase accordingly. So really, this is all this volatility associated with the REC going from 25 to roughly $45 is just around people expecting there to be movement in Harrisburg to adjust the solar carve-out. So that's all I have on solar for the time being, or at least on the SREC side. We can flip to the next slide, and we'll talk about a different type of solar mechanism called community solar, and just talk about the policy update in the Pennsylvania perspective. Now, it's important to understand that we're talking about SRECs on the first slide, which is RECs created by solar. Now we're talking about community solar. And I think something that is often lost in translation in the renewable world in regards to various types of offsite renewable transactions is that in a lot of cases, community solar is more of a financial transaction than it is an actual solar transaction. And that just has to do with the chain of custody related to the SREC associated with the offsite project. So in many cases, in a lot of markets that are already up and running from a community solar perspective, the investor-owned utility will take ownership or take title to that SREC produced by the community solar project and is not delivered or monetized by the end-use customer. So that's just something to watch out for, just from a confusion perspective. What we're seeing in Pennsylvania is that this policy is still evolving, so it's not clear how this will be structured yet, but I think we're starting to see this policy crystallize a little bit in Harrisburg. Just once again, to level set on the transaction side, community solar, we've broken it down to 3 steps here. Basically, you have an offsite solar facility that is developed by a renewable developer. Once that thing starts producing, then that energy is sent to the utility, and the utility awards a bill credit for the delivered electricity, and then subscribers to that community solar project get those bill credits assigned to their utility bill by the utility. So like the things to watch out for in the community solar world is like, how is that bill credit calculated? Typically, this is done by a utility commission based on a formula that is established in the legislature. And also kind of what are the requirements around the community solar project in terms of what the size can be, how many subscribers it needs to have, who can subscribe, whether it's a commercial and industrial customer or a residential customer or a mix of the two. And that's kind of what we're seeing happen in Harrisburg right now, is all these details get hashed out. So in June, we saw HB 155 be introduced, and this enables community solar in the state through amending amending existing legislation or statutes. And really what we start to see in the companion bill in SB 472 is this program coming into focus, and it starts defining what the bill credit looks like and what the community solar facility requirements are. So on the facility requirements, you're looking at projects that are going to be capped at 5 megawatts or less. They need to have 2 subscribers, and half of those subscriptions need to be by customers that I believe are below 25 kW. So basically, you have half the project allocated for commercial industrial, and the other half allocated to small comm or resi. On the bill credit side, you're starting to see kind of the value stack be defined there. That's going to be based on the energy price in the PJM market, capacity value, the estimated SREC value, as well as any savings on the distribution and transmission. Yeah, any on the distant transmission side will be credited as well. So basically, you'll take all those values, roll them up, and that will give you a per unit price on the credit side, which will ultimately end up as a discount to the customer's utility bill. So I know I just said a lot quickly there, kind of talk fast. So feel free to ask questions as you want to in the Q&A section, but I'm going to pass the mic back over and be quiet for a while. Oh, I actually forgot I had more slides. Wow. And then I'll introduce who NRG is real quick because, you know, memory is a great thing. So real quick, I work for NRG. We are a large energy supplier, so we really focus on the delivery of power and gas from the wholesale market to retail customers. We serve approximately 6 million customers across the US and Canadian market. And the thing that I really enjoy about NRG or respect about NRG is just the fact that we have been very proactive in our move towards sustainability. And it's been a long-standing philosophy and strategy for several years. So we have a net zero goal by 2050, a 50% goal by 2025. And we've been a leader in the Science-Based Target Initiative adoption. I think we were one of the first 6 organizations in the US to adopt that protocol, as well as one of the first power companies globally to adopt that. And really our philosophy is pretty straightforward. We believe in democratizing renewables through novel and innovative product structures. We believe in long-term relationships and really focusing on educating consumers to make informed renewable transactions. And also, as I've already noted, we're aggressively reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. We really focus on making sure that we're not only helping to support the renewable transition, but also doing that through leadership by changing our own operations. So I think that's actually my last slide, unless I'm forgetting another slide. So hopefully I'm right this time.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Clay. That was some great information. I jotted down a couple of questions that I might ask you when we go into the Q&A session. But if other people have questions, please start jotting them down, put them in the Q&A, and I'll be sure that we get to them after all of the panelists have shared their slides. Next up, we've got Tim Olson from Greenworks Lending, which was recently acquired by Nuveen. He'll be talking about using CPACE as a financing tool to pay for solar. So Tim, over to you.
Great. Thanks, Mary Rose, and thanks to the PEA for having us on here. Very exciting. Longtime partner with the PEA and have worked with Mary Rose and some of the other panelists. So it's a small world out there, but really excited to be here, and thanks for having me. I think we can go to the next slide. Yeah, so I like Clay. I'm gonna try and talk pretty quickly, go through a lot of information, but we'll have plenty of time for Q&A, and I have my email at the end of this if anybody wants to reach out directly. But my name is Tim Olson. I oversee the solar and storage financing at Greenworks Lending nationally. Like Mary Rose said, Greenworks Lending was recently acquired by Nuveen, so we're a part of Nuveen now. Greenworks Lending is exclusively a CPACE finance provider. So we're kind of a one-trick pony. We provide financing for solar and energy efficiency and other through the CPACE program. And I'll get into what that is and how that works. But just a little quick background. So our founders were at the Connecticut Green Bank back in before 2015. They were working with the Connecticut Green Bank to set up the first commercial PACE financing program. They saw the power of using CPACE to decarbonize our built environment, to grow solar and energy efficiency nationally. So they spun out and to create this company to finance outside of just Connecticut. We are now one of the nation's leading CPACE providers. We've closed more than 400 of these CPACE loans in over 27 states now. And Nuveen was a longtime partner of ours and had funded several of our facilities and saw the ability to continue to grow this financing mechanism to help decarbonize the built environment and meet their ESG goals. So in April of this year, we were officially brought in as part of Nuveen. We're still Greenworks Lending, but we work with them very closely, and they're helping us, accelerate the growth and get the support we need to grow this nationally and internationally. Next slide, please. So, I'm going to focus today definitely on Philadelphia. But like I said, back in 2015, PACE was commercial PACE was in Connecticut. It originally started for residential property owners in California and was in just a handful of states. But It's a very powerful financing mechanism and has now exploded across the US and is in more than 27 states, with more states coming forward, including New Jersey, right next to Philadelphia, Washington, Alaska, Tennessee, and Maine. And we hope to continue to fill in this map as time goes on. Next slide. So what CPACE, I'll go through this pretty quickly, but happy to answer questions later. The state of Pennsylvania and every other state where there's CPACE passes enabling legislation that basically designates certain types of commercial real estate improvements as a public benefit. And then those financing, the financing for those projects gets paid back through the property tax bill. This is a financing mechanism that's been around for a very long time. It's used by counties and other municipalities to finance public works. So think the city of Philadelphia improves a sidewalk, raises funds to do that project, and then places an involuntary tax assessment on those properties that are benefiting from that new sidewalk or sewer or a fire station or things like that. So they're financing public works that benefit specific properties. Many of you may be aware of seeing, on a property tax bill, you have your ad valorem tax that's based on the value of your property. And then you'll see specific, assessment for your sewer assessment or your sidewalk assessment. Basically what this does is the state of Pennsylvania has said, we want to encourage measures that help decarbonize these buildings, create economic development, and we want to allow commercial property owners to use that same mechanism voluntarily. So they're able to raise their hand and say, hey, I want to place one of those tax assessments on my property in exchange for financing for things like solar, energy efficiency, so HVAC, windows, lighting, building control, EV charging, anything that helps electrify and decarbonize their building, along with, in many states, including Pennsylvania, water efficiency as well. So low flow fixtures, improvements to help them conserve water. So these are things that are seen as a public benefit, things we want to encourage through this unique financing mechanism. And then that begs the question, okay, why go through all the trouble of setting up this program? And what it does is allows us to offer very attractive financing terms. So we can provide 100% financing that covers both the hard and soft costs. So any transactional costs, engineering, any soft costs that go along with permitting, things like that, we can finance 100% of these project costs for solar. And because we're on the property tax bill, and I'll talk about this a bit more later, but because we're on the property tax bill, we can offer much longer terms than standard bank loans. So we can offer through the useful life of the equipment. And so for solar, that's 20-25 years. We can include things like a new roof and things like that even extend that term. Solar especially presents, a large upfront capital expenditure that decreases your expenses. So you're seeing savings, as over time, but typically a lot of commercial property owners are faced with, okay, do I have the cash on hand to pay for that? Am I able to deal with a 7, 8, 9, 10-year payback before I hit cash flow positive? What this does is, help flip that conversation around to where you're getting 100% financing, you're putting $0 into it. By spreading out the term over 20-25 years, you're able to bring annual payments to the lowest payment possible out of a financing mechanism, with the goal of, your energy savings are going to exceed your annual payment. So you're able to invest $0 into your building, but you're decreasing your operating expenses, decarbonizing your building, and seeing net savings from day one, and creating a cash flow positive result. So it's built into the program. What we look for is we want to see that the net savings from your new HVAC or your solar or your windows or whatever, all of that exceeds how much you're paying into this. Next slide. This is reiterating some of what I said, but just going through some of these benefits of this long-term fixed rate financing that's on your property tax bill. And if I wasn't clear before, this is private capital. Greenworks Lending lends the money for your solar installation. And then you will then start receiving a property tax bill with a line item for a PACE tax assessment. And so you aren't paying monthly payments to a bank or anything like that. You see this on your property tax bill and pay it back through your property taxes. And that creates a number of benefits. So the NOI benefits we talked about, you're decreasing your operating expenses, you're lowering your utility bills with solar and energy efficiency. Because it's on the property and on the property tax bill, it can transfer automatically on the sale of the property. So rather than, if you're a commercial property owner and you have, you're not sure what you're going to do with your building in 3, 5, 8 years. A lot of times if you had a unsecured or some other type of bank loan financing, if you sell that property, you're going to have to pay off the remainder of the loan and decide if you're getting enough value out of the solar at the time of sale and things like that. This can just transfer automatically. You sell the property, next property owner comes in, they have the solar on the roof, lower operating expenses, and they just pick up those CPACE payments. They'll start seeing their property tax bill. So you don't have to pay off, it doesn't accelerate, you don't have to pay off the remainder of the loan. This is also private financing. This is not a third-party ownership structure, although we can do those, and I can talk about that. But this allows property owners to put $0 into the project and monetize those tax incentives up front, which are the 26% ITC, year one, bonus depreciation. So that can add up to, depending on your federal tax rate, half of the value of the system. So you install a $1 million solar system on your roof, you can be $0 into the project and have $500,000 in net benefits in tax incentives year one. That's incredibly impactful to property owners deciding whether or not they want to go solar. If you can show, $500,000 in benefits in year one, rather than spreading those out over 20 years. This is also, when we're looking at this from a financing perspective, we're looking at not necessarily will that particular off-taker or that particular tenant be there, making payments to us for the next 20, 25 years. What we care about is the value of that property. Will there be somebody there making property tax for the next 20, 25 years? So the underwriting for us is different and allows us to look at the value of the property rather than, what's their credit? Is this an investment grade off-taker? Which allows us to just expand that solar market. So it helps us to open up those properties in Philadelphia that may not have investment grade credit and necessarily be qualifying for a great PPA rate or something like that. We can get around that and expand the available portfolio of property owners who can access solar. And that was really the main goal from the beginning of PACE, is how do we expand the solar market for small to medium C&I property owners. $0 out of pocket, we talked about. Something I think we'll come back to later is that this can help with the split incentive problem with landlords and tenants, because it's paid back through their property taxes in a triple net lease. Property owners are typically also responsible for the tenants are responsible for the property taxes. So they're seeing the lower utility bills, and they're also paying for it back through the property taxes. Excuse me. Just rushing through a couple more of these. I mentioned it doesn't accelerate if you sell the property. This is non-recourse financing. We're secured by the property. So we're not asking for personal or corporate guarantees, which is really helpful for a lot of these small C&I property owners. This doesn't use up your capacity with your bank. If you're taking out a bank loan for a line of credit or unsecured financing or something like that for the solar system, that may subtract from your ability to go back to your bank for other business expenses and expanding your business or other improvements to your property. So this helps preserve borrowing capacity. I'll go on to the try to speed this up a little bit. So this is just reiterating what the goal of this, and it all comes back to some of those things Clay talked about and others are going to talk about, is this is long-term financing, but the value of the solar, we want to see utility bill savings exceeding your annual debt service. That comes down to what are your SRECs valued at, and what's your net metering policy, and how much are you saving per kilowatt hour generated by that solar. And with community solar, we can finance community solar on the roof of a warehouse. They may not have a huge load, but if they can sell that electricity into a community solar program, then we can help them finance that system, and they see an alternate revenue source. So really, this is 100% upfront financing with this idea of being cash flow positive, but that all comes back to, do we have the right policies in place for solar through net metering and RECs and community solar programs? And so that's something we love working with PEA and others on this call, to how do we can provide the financing, but if the value of the solar isn't there, then nobody's going to want to anyways, but we are seeing, we closed the first CPACE solar project in Philadelphia last year on a mixed use building. It was a 212 kilowatt system, but it's great just to show that, they were able to hit that cash flow positive point. And, as we continue to ramp up RPS goals and rec values and things like that, it's just going to become more and more attractive, but it still represents a large capital expenditure. So we can provide that financing for them to be able to take advantage of those policies and programs. Flexible, it's secure, you can transfer it, there's no guarantees required, things like that. And it's pretty easy to qualify. So like I said, we're able to get around imperfect credit and off takers who may not qualify for other financing sources. Next slide, please. So who can use CPACE? The C in CPACE stands for commercial PACE. So this isn't for individual residential properties. It's for commercial properties and not for government owned. So because it's paid back through the property tax bill, we can't do this on government owned buildings. But basically every other commercial property type other than multifamily right now. So multifamily may become available soon, and I think we'll talk about that later. But hotels, offices, mixed use, retail, manufacturing, nonprofits can qualify for this as well. We actually have PACE secured third-party ownership options as well. So churches, country clubs, credit unions, there's lots of those out there who can't monetize those tax credits. And what we can do is use PACE to prepay a 20 or 25-year PPA or lease. So somebody else comes in, owns the system, buys down the cost of that system for that nonprofit, but through a tax equity contribution. And rather than making ongoing PPA or lease payments, they're just, or PPA or lease payments, they're making PACE payments instead. Next slide. Again, running out of time, so I'll just quickly go through this. Energy efficiency we can do, I talked about that. We can also do ground up new construction. So if you're interested in using PACE as part of a capital stack for new construction, we pull out PACE eligible measures and we finance that portion of the capital stack, as well as solar and renewables, obviously. Next slide. Lisa, can we go to, are you able to go to the next slide? I think this is my last slide, but just reiterating some of those solar, the value proposition of PACE for solar. This is financing that allows commercial property owners to put solar on their roof, carports, vacant land right behind their property. You can do ground mount. It gives them access to all of those tax incentives, either through their own ability to monetize them. You can do ownership structures, and you can wrap in other efficiency measures that you're doing. If you need a new roof, if you need, if you're doing other energy efficiency projects, it can all be wrapped into the same financing. I think I just have a quick legal slide after this. You can come back to this and read it when you're feeling like you really want to dig into some legalese, but this will be on the recording, and that's it. I'll hand it back. Thanks for the time.
Cool. Thanks so much, Tim. I could talk about CPACE all day and probably have. So thank you for that primer. Next, we're going to hear from Ashlyn Berlato. Ashlyn is actually from EDPR, and she'll be here talking to us about another financing option that we can use to pay for solar, which is the use of the power purchase agreement. So Ashlyn, handing it over to you.
Great, thank you. And hi, everyone. As mentioned, my name is Ashlyn Berlato. I lead business development efforts for the distributed generation business unit of EDP Renewables North America. I just want to take a quick moment to say that we're really excited to be here today, and we want to thank the folks at the Philadelphia Energy Authority for organizing this event, and looking forward to continuing the conversation with my fellow co-panelists. So I'll start off by giving you a bit of background on our company. And so EDPR NADG is a turnkey provider of distributed generation solar and solar plus storage assets. And we specialize in projects under 20 megawatts AC all across the United States. Currently, we have roughly 90 megawatts of operating assets, although that number is growing almost every week now. And we work in 17 states with a very large footprint in the Northeast. We also have another 200 plus megawatts in various stages of development and construction across the country. So our footprint is rapidly expanding. We're very interested in the state of Pennsylvania and Philadelphia specifically. And broadly speaking, we are part of EDP Renewables, as was mentioned. EDP Renewables is actually the 4th largest owner of wind, both globally and in the US. And we have about 7 gigawatts of assets that encompass both wind and solar. And our expertise includes a wide variety of projects, as you can see on the screen here. We are specialists in both ground mounted and rooftop arrays, and also have some canopy mounted projects. We're actually breaking into the floating solar market, so continuing to innovate, which is very exciting. And as you can see here, we really serve a very wide range of longstanding customers. We have a lot of large commercial retailers. Our biggest client right now is actually Walmart, but we also work with a variety of manufacturing entities. We have a multitude of municipal partners and local governments. We work with religious institutions, 42 schools across the country and counting, hospitals, small utilities, etc. So we really are a versatile group. We're excited to chat a bit about our business model. So if we can go to the next slide, I will jump in. Thank you. So our business model and what we'll be speaking about today is largely the value proposition towards third-party financing, and particularly on-site behind the meter power purchase agreements, although we are active in the community solar market as well, which Clay touched upon. And so what we do essentially is offer a $0 down solution for our clients. And we actually finance the projects on site ourselves off of our balance sheet. And we secure tax equity funding for our clients who cannot actually utilize or are not interested in utilizing the tax credits themselves. So in this scenario, we would install an on-site solar project of whatever type is and size is most appropriate on a client's facility. And the power generated from that system would actually be paid for from the client directly to, in this case, EDPR at a typically a fixed dollar per kilowatt hour rate. And so, we provide all of the upfront capital, and in turn, you pay us similar to how you would pay your utility provider. As has been mentioned before, any excess energy that is produced by the array is sent to the grid. And depending on the net metering regulations, our clients could be compensated for this excess energy. But then, of course, there is typically energy that is also still supplied by the utility provider. And so the utility would continue to provide energy for any needs not met by the solar array. And I just want to take a minute to kind of discuss net metering and clarify what I mean when we talk about that. Essentially, this is a billing mechanism so that credits that are, sent to the grid, or energy that is sent to the grid, is credited to the client. And this is only really applicable when the solar array is overproducing compared to, what you are using on site. In an ideal scenario, clients would be credited at the retail rate, although sometimes there are different credit mechanisms, including either the wholesale rate or another rate that is set by the utility. And another thing I wanted to mention in this scenario that has been talked about before is the value of the SREC and how that works with a third-party financer. And so, in many situations, we actually retain ownership of the RECs to help finance the project. But in turn, we often provide our clients with replacement RECs. We call this REC arbitrage. And these RECs are certified or green e-certifiable. And so they do count towards your greenhouse gas emissions and reductions goals. And so typically here, the rate in which we would charge our customers is actually less than the rate that you're paying your utility provider. And so you are seeing cost savings, hopefully in year one. And it's a way to sort of stabilize your bottom line, as our rate typically has a 0% escalator. And from a utility perspective, we're seeing, maybe 2 to 6% increase per year. I think, something that's important to note here is that in our scenario specifically, we do finance off of our balance sheet, which is something that's unique in the industry. And so we don't have to, secure any outside funding aside from that tax equity partner. And then from there, as a turnkey provider, we would also oversee all of the design, development, construction, and asset management for the lifetime of the contract, which ranges anywhere from 15 to 25 years. And I know that this will be talked about in a bit, but we do strive to utilize local partners for much of the development and construction work. So this is a really great way to help contribute to the local workforce, and in this case, the workforce in the city of Philadelphia. So we can move on to the next slide. So I just wanted to provide a little bit of a snapshot into how this works, and note that, in addition to cost savings, on-site solar provides an opportunity for clients across all sectors to really visibly show their commitment to the environment. It's an asset for the community to see, and also a way to kind of reach their sustainability and energy procurement goals among the other efforts that they may be taking. And so, there is really a way to tailor our approach to each system that we design and build. And there's a lot of options and adders that come with on-site solar, including exploring, co-located technologies to fit various customer needs, which could include on-site storage and also EV charging stations. So one case study we just wanted to highlight that we think is relevant, considering, this is within the city of Philadelphia, is our work with another municipality, the city of Westbrook in Maine. And we worked with the city and are continuing to work with them to meet essentially 4 main goals. The first being redevelopment of the 2 city-owned capped landfills, which is another very interesting topic for us, is kind of, that land redevelopment, and that's another environmental benefit. The second goal was, of course, cost savings. The third being progress towards the city's sustainability goals. And the fourth being a way to engage the community and educate the community in the project. And so our work with the city includes designing a ground-mounted array on the capped landfills through a cost-effective long-term power purchase agreement. And we are also integrating a learning array and 2 EV charging stations at the city's high school, while also working with the city's educators to train them in educating the students about the on-site solar investment, and providing curriculum materials to help with that process. So this is just one example of how, an on-site solar array can really become a community asset. And this can be replicated, really with any customer, commercial or not, that wants to kind of engage the local community and partner with a local school district to help educate the students about this project. So it's a really great way to kind of integrate STEM opportunities and also to see a project in real life. So that's a little bit about what we do. My contact information is also on the next slide, I believe. So we'd be happy to follow up with anyone to talk further. And again, we really appreciate this opportunity.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ashlyn. Really appreciate your comments. I'm going to introduce our final speaker now, and then we can move into the audience Q&A time. Micah Gold-Markell is from Solar States. Speaking of local partners, Solar States has worked on a number of different projects here in Philadelphia, and I will kick it over to him to talk about commercial projects in Philly and workforce development initiatives. Micah?
Thanks, Mary Rose. I appreciate it. Thank you to the PEA, and thank you to everyone who's taken some time out of their schedule to be on this Zoom. I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully, a number of folks can see this. So on my screen now, we are, as was mentioned earlier, the sort of local installation partner here. We've done a number of solar projects in and around the Philadelphia area. Most notably, we just completed a project at Yards Brewing, one of my favorite beers. Very glad to have solar involved in the making of beer, as well as the City of Philadelphia Archive Space. And there's actually a Target in the same building. It is what's known as the largest multi-tenant PPA in the state of Pennsylvania. and we did the installation. You can see a little bit on our website about the project and sort of how it went down. We did about 2,000 solar panels on the roof there. We've also done a number of different styles of projects. One of the first was at the Crane Arts building. This is a PPA, power purchase agreement, that we actually own ourselves. It's about 11 years old now, where we guaranteed the building owner a 20% savings on PICO costs throughout the life of the PPA. And actually behind the Crane Arts, you can see this red building here. That's our office that we just built about 2 years ago. So we are based here in South Kensington in Philadelphia. And then we have a number of other commercial projects. Oh, whoops, I got a little confused here. So here's another type of project. This was very interesting. So this is actually a solar canopy. It's elevated above the roof. You can see the air conditioning units there. We built a steel structure that spanned 66 feet from parapet wall to parapet wall because the roof itself was not capable of withstanding the weight of solar and snow loads, but the parapet walls could carry it. So we engineered a very specific solution. And this was a community development financial institution named Finenta. They're at the corner of 2nd and Thompson that we designed and installed this solar array for. And then last but not least, in terms of the solar that we've installed around, and again, this is just a sample of our projects. We've done a lot of work. I don't want to drone on too long. But this is an example of a carport with EV charging integrated. This was for a client called Click. It's out in King of Prussia. And this is a really cool looking solar array. And the EV chargers are powered off of solar. So you really get that awesome, zero carbon benefit when you're charging your vehicle at this location. And I think we're going to see a whole lot more of this style of solar coming. There's a lot of open parking areas out there. There's a lot of EVs coming, and there's a lot of federal attention on that as well. So I think, if you or anyone are interested in this sort of thing, it's a great project, and we're going to see more and more of this coming down the pipeline here. So in terms of workforce development, first off, I'd have to give a big shout out to the PEA. We're part of a DOE grant with many other partners where we're developing what's called a CTE curriculum, or Career Technical Education curriculum for the state of Pennsylvania around solar as a vocation. And that's what we've really been working on for the last, I would say 8 to 10 years. We've been working with Youth Build. They're a charter school that takes students who have dropped out of high school, want to come back. They want to get their GED and they want to learn a vocation. We started a solar track there, and now we've moved that to Philadelphia Public Schools, as well as an adult training organization called OIC. I'm actually wearing their shirt today. With that in mind, we really want to get hands-on, and we've built training roofs at these facilities, and we get the students up and working. And this is all part of our mission. We're what's known as a B certified corporation. So we have a triple bottom line of people, planet, and profit. And so our mission is to be the on-ramp to the green collar economy for inner city Philadelphians. And without training, there would be no way we could really accomplish that. So I would say about 50% of our workforce is made up of people who have come through our programs, which is pretty cool. To give you one example, you can go to our LinkedIn or our website, and you can really see some of the testimonials of the folks who have worked with us. So as you can see, we're a very intentionally diverse workforce. We also have a a podcast called Yo Son. I got to say it like that. I'm sorry. It's just, when you're saying Yo Son, you can't just say it in a calm voice. And you can see here some images of our training facilities. This one's at the ECA. And these are two of our leads demonstrating proper installation technique to two students. Safety is taught, so they have personal fall arrest systems on, and all of that stuff is taught there. But I think we're talking a lot here about solar and PPAs, and yes, it's great for the environment. Absolutely. Can it save money for clients? Certainly. But for us, the biggest piece of this is employment. It's all about jobs. People need to work. They need to be able to make a good living. And that's what solar really provides, is this ability to make a living and to have an impact on your community. And we've seen this time and again where people come in, they didn't know anything about solar. They go through our training course, they start up, and wow, it just makes a huge difference in their lives. And I'll give you an example. We have a person named Cottrell Holmes. He started with us through PowerCore. He was released from jail on a bit of a longer sentence, and came out and said, I want to do something with my life, but I don't know what I want to do. And we got him into our training programs. He started excelling. I remember in year 2, we did the employee review, and I said, so Cottrell, how do you like your job? And he goes, job? What do you mean? I go, your job, the job you're working on, Cottrell. And he goes, I don't know what you mean. And I go, the job, man. He goes, this isn't a job, man. This is a career. And I was like, oh my God, I had to hit myself in the head. He gets it more than I do about what we're trying to do here. And so we've seen that time and again, to the point where we now have people who have been in our programs, who have come through Solar States, who have gotten their own electrical licenses, who have moved on to other companies, that sort of stuff. And that's what we're here to do, is to really have this be a launching pad for everyone who wants to get into this industry, because this industry is exploding with growth. We're going to see more and more renewables. I look around at the people just on this Zoom, from Clay and NRG and all of the folks, EDP. I mean, everyone involved here is part of growing the industry, and wouldn't be here unless it was a growing industry. And it's the wave of the future. We're really excited about what the Biden administration has coming down the pipe, and I think CPACE is just outstanding. I mean, I heard one in this presentation, and I hadn't even thought of this before, that you could get $500,000 in tax benefits with zero out-of-pocket money. I mean, that's incredible. That's just an incredible opportunity. So, we're excited to provide the workforce to get quality installations done, and we look forward to working with all of the partners throughout the industry to accomplish this. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much for your comments and for the overview of your mission and the work that you've done here in Philly. It's really wonderful. I'd now like to take our last 10 minutes on this webinar to open it up to questions from the audience. The first 2 questions have come across while we were speaking, so I'll kind of field them. Clay, one question for you is around the expected timeline of the passage of the community solar bills that you were talking about, and how certain that passage looks, if you can ever call anything in Harrisburg certain, and what that would all mean for the timing of actual projects being built.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head. Harrisburg is a squirrely beast. So I don't know when it's going to be passed. My common refrain I hear from my community solar teammates is 2022 seems like the year where we might get lucky with this stuff in Pennsylvania. So we're looking at next year. But nothing's a certainty, and you don't really know what it's going to look like. If you follow the community solar policy space in other states, everything looks a little bit different. Everything follows kind of a winding road to final passage. So it'll be an interesting one to watch to see where it goes from here until passage, and hopefully it makes it across the finish line.
Yeah.
If I could jump in there, I think everyone should contact their state rep. I mean, community solar is so important. it's so important. First off, it's going to unlock a lot of jobs. There's literally jobs waiting to be created here. Like developers are just all over, and I'm sure, you know, Ashlyn can talk to this, or Tim, you know, it's like people are just waiting for community solar in the state of Pennsylvania. So the moment we get it passed, it's going to be tons of jobs. Also, there's huge ramifications for low-income Philadelphians and for Philadelphians who don't own their homes. I mean, it's the only way to go solar if you don't own your home. If you have if you have an apartment and you want to get solar energy, community solar is like really unlocks this in a neat way. It can save you money. So we got to push hard for community solar in the state.
Yes,
for sure.
I think that's right, Micah. Thanks for making that point very clear. And while you're calling your state rep to talk about community solar, you might as well ask about the solar carve out too and the AEPS increase, because ultimately, like the price of the SREC, if you think about a solar project, whether it's on-site or off-site, you really have $2 levers on those projects. You have the energy value, whether it's being net energy billed or net metered, or you have like wholesale value of the off-site PPA, and then you have the REC value. And so if you increase that AEPS, you're going to see that SREC value go up, and it's going to make the financials for both on-site and off-site solar a lot more attractive, and really just increase the installed capacity in the state. And I think it was really nicely done by Ashlyn. You know, the project she showed in Maine was actually a community solar project. The community solar in Maine is a very lucrative program. You're looking at like $120 a megawatt hour of value for that community solar program. And that helps you understand like just how much capacity is installed once you really turn on the spigot of dollars associated with community solar. So I'm excited to see what I've seen in other states really happen in Pennsylvania from both a community solar perspective and also from a higher SREC value perspective.
And just one more thing to add there, building off both of what you mentioned, I think, you know, there's also an opportunity for the state to look to other states that have community solar programs and learn best practices, but also potentially what didn't work or what was unforeseen. And there's a way to really build off of that and make this a very strong program from the start, which we've seen in other states is important to have these details fleshed out. So I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing if it takes a little longer, but I do think that there is an opportunity to build off of what's already been done.
And just to jump on the legislative bandwagon. Oh, Tim, do you want to talk?
I also wanted to jump on this bandwagon.
Go ahead.
But just to kind of reiterate what everybody else had said, I mean, I worked in the policy sector for 5 to 8 years on solar policies and things like that. And now I have the opportunity to be on the finance side, working with a broad array of contractors and property owners and that. And these all would have an immediate impact on, you know, property owners and projects with their ability to move forward. So I'm always looking at, you know, dozens of different projects and how do they pencil, and the ability to use community solar is something we've used a lot in New York. We financed a bunch of projects and it works really successfully. So like Ashlyn said, look to how some of these other programs are working, or just, you know, more significant RPSs and things like that. That takes property thinking about, maybe I want to do solar, but it's not perfect or it's not hitting exactly what I want. You know, if there's just even a slight bump in the value, there's definitely a range of projects that will suddenly move forward. So definitely do everything you can to push for these.
Nice. And then the bandwagon item that I will add is there's actually currently a bill being considered in Harrisburg to expand CPACE to include multifamily buildings. As Tim noted in his slides, in many states, multifamily buildings can use CPACE to pay for solar and other energy efficiency work. And we're hoping that that will be the case in Pennsylvania sooner rather than later as well. So that's another policy initiative we could see that would really open up the solar and energy efficiency markets here. Recognizing we only have about 3 minutes left, I'm going to acknowledge another question here from Jeremy. Thank you for submitting this question about the requirements on PACE for a building's lender. Do they have to approve a PACE loan? Tim, I'm going to hand this over to you.
Yeah, I can answer that real quickly, and then there's a longer answer. But yes, we always work with any other senior lender that's on the property to get their consent. They need to, you know, sign a basic one-page document saying that this PACE loan won't put them in default of their current mortgage, and they understand that there's a PACE loan being placed on the property. You know, we don't want to surprise them with, you know, sudden tax assessment on a property where they have a mortgage. The longer answer is, you know, there's some knee-jerk reactions you might get from senior lenders because property taxes technically would come senior to them in a default scenario. But we've gotten over 400 lenders comfortable with PACE that have consented to PACE loans in the US, because when you break it down, you're improving the value of their underlying asset. You're putting solar on the roof, you're decreasing their operating expenses, you're increasing the NOI of that property. And doing so with very minimal risk to that senior lender, because these are non-accelerating. So if there is a year where the bank has to take over ownership of that property, the only thing that would ever come ahead of them would be, that one property tax payment that was in default, not the next, 15 years of property tax payments. So there's major value to their underlying property with very minimal to them. And we're happy to, we lead those conversations all the time and have had great success.
Thank you. That's great. Yeah, Jeremy, please feel free to reach out to Tim or anyone here at PEA, me, Lisa, Matt, to talk more about that. Mary Nichols Rhodes, I see a question from you about the types of policies that you might want to consider to enable more solar on the residential side in your jurisdiction. We probably have a very lengthy answer for you there. So I'm going to take down your question and your contact information and follow up with you directly to provide some information that we've seen that's been helpful in Philadelphia. And since this is really focused on the commercial side, I'll save some of the residential specific ordinances and policies to take offline. But thank you for submitting the question. I think that we have one more minute. So I'd like to actually ask Ashlyn, you mentioned Walmart, government institutions, religious institutions, a whole bunch of different types of customers who consider going or who go solar. Can you talk about the different value propositions that solar has to these different types of customers and why they decide to go solar?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually something that we think a lot about internally, and why all of these seemingly different institutions all kind of have this motivation to go solar. And I think actually in a lot of ways, the value proposition is very similar. Initially, this may have started off as a cost saving mechanism, but more and more we're seeing folks across all sectors really want to reach their sustainability goals and show either their employees or their investors or their students that this is important to them and that they are actually trying to contribute much more than maybe what their initial, motivation was or initial, essentially purpose was. It's grown and it's changed into really being essentially a good business or a good nonprofit, however you want to define the word good. And in this case, I think it's really about being sustainable and thinking about the future. And so, there are also a lot of other kind of adders, including, resiliency, which is very important in certain states across the country. And there's also, an opportunity to kind of engage the community in exactly what was talked about before, workforce development and contributing kind of to the next generation of solar leaders. So I think solar is actually a very unifying thing for, all different types of industries. And that's why this policy support that we're talking about is really powerful, because it's really not just for one industry, and it unlocks a lot of opportunities for clients basically in every sector. And that's what we're seeing. So a lot more to be said there as well, but I think that ultimately, it serves the purpose of stabilizing your bottom line, reducing energy volatility, of course, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, contributing to those sustainability goals, whatever they may be, and then also serves as an asset for the community to be proud of, and especially in low-income communities, it's a way to actually directly impact health outcomes and really serve the community as a pillar of sustainability and environmental progress. So I'm sure there's more to be said on that from my other colleagues here as well, but that's just my initial thinking.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Uh,
I think I need to cut us off. We're at 4:01 now, and I know we're all, solar evangelists on this call, so I think we could keep talking about it for hours. And if any of you out there listening want to continue these conversations, please feel free to reach out to any of us on the panel. We'll be posting this recording on our website, philaenergy.org. You can also go to the Solarize website, solarizephilly.org, to learn more, to submit questions, to figure out how to go solar yourself. And you can reach out to us at solarize@philaenergy.org. if you want to be connected to any panelists, please feel free to reach out and we'll make sure we make the connection. Thank you all for joining us today. Thank you to all of our wonderful panelists, and look forward to seeing you guys all go solar. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.